we're well into the start of August, and the NBA dominoes are still not completely falling as of yet. One of those being Anthony Davis. The Washington Wizards apparently want to sign Anthony Davis to a contract extension, but him and his representation are holding that off. And it kind of makes some sense in a ways. Anthony Davis is yet to officially suit up for the Washington Wizards, but it's left now a conversation to wonder if a trade request could come if those contract extensions are not met at some point. Dillon Brooks also gets a 3-year, $73 million deal that we're going to talk about. Denver adds to their depth as well. And Jonathan Kuminga is still waiting, and the Sacramento Kings seem to be waiting to have a home for him. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of the Full Court Podcast. My name is Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow us at the Full Court YT on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go to get into this content for today, y'all. And there has been some talks about Anthony Davis and some speculation on what could happen with Anthony Davis here and the Washington Wizards. This one does come from Brett Siegel, who says this: league sources who were granted anonymity, I don't know why I said that wrong, to speak freely told The Athletic that any meaningful talks between Davis and the Wizards are about as possible extensions will occur during the 2026-27 season, but not before. The decision to hold off on substantive talks until the season could stem in part from both parties needing to learn more about each other, questions that perhaps can be answered after Davis and the team have played a large enough sample size of regular season games. The trade talk around that is never going to stop, right? I think when you have a player that is of the ilk of Anthony Davis, even when he, the fact that he does get often injured, there's going to be tons of people asking the questions and what does this mean? What's going to happen? I do think that waiting does make sense, right? I think for a number of reasons. He's not played an official game in Washington yet. That's the biggest thing there. You want to see the fit with Trae Young, Dybantsa, Deandre Ayton, Khris Middleton, all the Trae Johnson, all the young players, Bub Carrington, all the players there, right? So you may want a real sample size. You've already committed big money to Trae Young. And so because of that, do you want to lock yourself into another veteran at a big money contract before you really see how they play with your new young core that you are hopefully focused on developing in Washington, right? And so I do think that, Davis is probably wanting to see what it's going to look like in Washington and where they are. Washington's probably going to want to see what he looks like playing with that team. And Anthony Davis is at a point in his career, even with him being injured, even with, being street clothes and all that type of stuff, is that he wants to compete for something. And if you're on a roster that you feel like isn't actually competing for something, it may make him a little bit more reluctant to buy in. And especially when you have the young players that they have there. Dybantsa, Alex Sarr, Trae Johnson, Keyshawn George, like Bub Carrington, who I already mentioned. You have a number of young players there that, again, you can develop within structure. I'm somebody that doesn't believe that because you were trying to develop young players, it means that all of your shots have to go to those guys because you want to try to develop them in an actual situation where you can win basketball games. But there's still some question on maybe he does clog it up a little bit much to that, right? The delay is going to fuel trade speculation. So you can't do anything in regard to trying to stave off or try not to get the trade speculation to start because that's going to happen. The one thing in the NBA, people are going to speculate on trades is going to be there. If Washington starts slow, right, every contender may start calling for Anthony Davis depending on if he's really available or not, right? So if you're unsure about the timeline of Anthony Davis, he fitting in that, the contract extensions get uncomfortable and, we'll see, right? The question then becomes about what does Washington need to do for Anthony Davis to feel like Washington is the place that he wants to be, right? Of course, Trae Young gives Washington the offensive engine, the player that has to play within a certain structure, all that type of stuff, but it's another veteran and that can get him the ball. Absolutely. Like Trae Young can get him the ball. Dybantsa gives you the future young star that you can watch develop. And then by the time Anthony Davis' career starts dying off, you can have a second life of it just being a defender playing off Dybantsa. Now, the Khris Middleton, Deandre Ayton part of it, that's veteran talent that has their own flaws and stuff like that. But this is a team in the Washington Wizards that aren't built to just be bad for the entirety of the year, right? But the fit there isn't quite as seamless, right? Anthony Davis has injury concerns. Dybantsa and the young core are trying to develop, and that doesn't always go the straight line path to where you're getting better. Trae Young's usage and the defensive limitations could put even more pressure on Anthony Davis to be that defender that he's been able to be. So it's going to be interesting. Like the Washington Wizards could be a team that quickly rises up if things fit together, or it could be a team that you're looking at and people in a year or so are like, hey, why do they put all these veterans in the wave to development of the young pieces? Because it's not working, right? So the Washington Wizards, especially like even before deciding if they want to re-sign Anthony Davis, like you lose flexibility for a long-term contract with Anthony Davis. Like take all the on-court basketball stuff that can potentially go left, potentially go right, whatever it is that, your financial flexibility at being a young team, it gets completely ruined by that, right? And so therefore, like, it could signal, one, that Washington's serious and they think that they really have a team that's going to be able to compete, contend, whatever you want to call it, within the next couple of years. Or it could be something that is a death knell to the flexibility of that team. And then in a year, you're looking at it and saying, why did we do this? But, keep your options open right now. I think that's the right thing. And Washington, until they lock in Anthony Davis with a contract extension, should be listening to all trade offers, because if something does come along that is a can't-miss deal from a contender that's willing to spend a lot of their picks to get Anthony Davis in there, then maybe you want to listen to that. And we'll see what happens in regards to that one. But all right, moving on from that to a player that actually did get signed a contract extension, and that's Dillon Brooks, who got a $73 million contract extension with the Phoenix Suns. That came from Shams, who reported it, saying this. Phoenix Suns forward Dillon Brooks has agreed to a 3-year, $73 million contract extension through 29-30. Mike George of Clutch Sports tells ESPN, Brooks has become a key part of the Suns' two-way, hard-nosed culture under Jordan Ott and lands a new guaranteed long-term deal. So, it's good to see that, Dillon Brooks is a player that is very unique, right? If he's on your team, you tend to love him. If he's not on your team, you tend to hate him. And if he hates you, he's going to make your life a living hell every chance he gets. One of the best things that we've ever seen is him showing up to a playoff game to troll Bron. Like, it's there, right? But Dillon Brooks, for what it's worth, has been a really good player. I think he's been a good player at his last 2 stops, to be honest with you. Like, ever since the Memphis thing happened, it seems like it was a wake-up call in a way for Dillon Brooks, that he realized, like, let me get my shit together. Let me start actually playing. Like, I'm still going to be the enforcer. I'm still going to be somebody that gets in players' heads, all that type of stuff. But I'd say even his 2 years in Houston and last year in Phoenix, he had a really solid season for those teams, right? Last year averaging 20 points, which is crazy to say. That's just wild to say from him. So Dillon Brooks is a guy that you just can't overlook. And he's a guy that is important for culture. And if you want to try to play two-way basketball, Dillon Brooks is a guy that can do that, right? Averaging a career-high 20.2 points per game, helping the Suns surpass the expectations of what they had after the Kevin Durant trade. It was all there. He brings toughness, he brings edge, he brings everything that you can want in that. But at the same time, like, this deal could age badly. And that's the risk you run with signing veterans, right? His offensive efficiency isn't the best despite scoring 20 points. Suns are paying him after a career year. Sometimes that always doesn't go the way you want to afterwards. And if the scoring regresses, the contract gets louder and louder as that goes on. But I think Dillon Brooks, at this point, like, his value in Phoenix is really high. And I think for this Phoenix Suns team that I think still has a really good roster, Kaman Malawak, who had an amazing summer league, could be ready to hit the ground running, right? What he gave the Suns, I think he proved that he can give the Suns even more, right? And I say at the same time, let's not overreact at the same time. Yes, he had a career best season scoring year, which is great to see. He needs to be better efficiency-wise as well. And I do think Phoenix, at the end of the day, you don't want to overextend him offensively just because he averaged 20 points. You want to have that come along, right? Still have, like, don't get outside your body is basically what it is. You need to continue to allow it to just be organic in what you're building here in Phoenix. And I think that's good. Like, yeah, the reputation and all that stuff, but, I'm somebody who, I grew up in the 90s. Like, at the end of the day, like, players like Dillon Brooks were, not to say that they were a dime a dozen, but there were a lot more players that were antagonists and players that embraced that role of an antagonist. It's perfectly okay to be the bad guy to other people. As long as you're not the bad guy to your own teammates, your own fan base, then I don't see the problem with that. Again, we live in too much of a PC culture anyway. You want somebody who can disrupt some shit and fuck some shit up from time to time. Dillon Brooks is that, and also a guy that, even with the inefficient scoring, at the same time, like, what he brings defensively, what he brings in as an enforcer, he's going to protect his guys. He's going to make those guys feel like it's okay to be themselves. So I'm perfectly okay with that one. Another acquisition is Lonnie Walker got signed to the Denver Nuggets for a very reasonable deal, a $3.3 million 1-year contract for Lonnie Walker IV, and that was reported by Shams Charania. Lonnie Walker is 27 years old. He's returning to the NBA after spending it with Tel Aviv and Israel last season. He was a former number 18th overall pick. Now, overseas when he played basketball, he appeared in 45 games. He averaged 15.2 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2.2 assists as well. So I think when you look at that, also 15 points in EuroLeague, right? and that's good. When you look at him the last year he played in the NBA, which is the 2024-25 season, he finished with 12.4 points per game, 3.2 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. So when you talk about the Denver Nuggets who need high-level role players around Jokic, I can see a world in which Lonnie Walker is really good for that team, playing off what that team can do, giving them some tough minutes across the board. And at the end of the day, it's a 1-year, $3.3 million deal too. So it doesn't mean, it's a low-risk deal. And I again, even if he ends up just being a player on a bench, right? He just ends up being a player. You're not paying him a whole lot to be that, right? And you're not attaching long-term money to it. So I don't really think you can lose this deal. Can you shoot above 40% from three? If you can shoot that, then you're really good with it. Now, the question a lot of people are asking is, what does this mean for players like Peyton Watson and Bruce Brown? I don't know if it means anything for Peyton Watson yet because, they're still trying to figure that out. But for Bruce Brown, I think that means that he's gone. Bruce Brown is not returning to this team. It already seemed unlikely when you get to this point of free agency. I don't know if he was waiting out maybe with a chance because I'm still surprised Bruce Brown is even out there in the free agent market. But, it adds some needed flexibility to this team and adds another veteran that can replace what Bruce Brown gave you. And, at the end of the day, the second apron pressure is not solved. There's nothing for the second tax apron at all for that one. And, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens for this one. Last topic of the day before we get out of here, Jonathan Kuminga, reportedly the Kings, a team that's been reported as being interested in Jonathan Kuminga for a while now, are still interested in Jonathan Kuminga. Now, this was a team that reportedly wanted him before the Atlanta Hawks ended up landing him last year. This is per ESPN that says this. Despite holding a clear interest in Kuminga's signature, any sign and trade deal that they manage to negotiate with the Hawks will leave them hard capped at the first apron. Further, in the absence of a sign and trade, Sacramento can only offer a minimum contract, something Kuminga is obviously not looking for. The Kuminga thing is, you guys know, I tell you how I feel about it every time it comes up. I feel like we talk so much about Jonathan Kuminga, and he's not even a star-level player and doesn't have a big impact on his teams yet. But he is still a very young player that still has a lot of potential left there. And so a team like the Sacramento Kings that are clearly going a different and younger direction, taking a shot on Jonathan Kuminga can't really hurt at this point. If he doesn't work out for you, he doesn't work out. Just at some point, some team just needs to sign Jonathan Kuminga. And, let that happen. Like, regardless of what Kuminga and his agency may want, that deal doesn't look like it's going to be out there for you, young fella. Like, $20 million plus is not going to be out there for you. So you can either sign a 1-year deal, keep trying to re-up your value, maybe a 2-year deal for that, and try to get back into free agency while you're still very young and in your prime. And maybe at that point, you've had some time to kind of prove who and what you can be. But as it stands right now, there's not a big market for Jonathan Kuminga, and it doesn't expect for one to develop for him either. I don't know I don't know how he's being advised. I don't know what his agent is telling him. I don't know what his agent is hearing that's making him think that they have some confidence that Jonathan Kuminga is going to find some long-term safe deal. But the Lakers still appear in the Jonathan Kuminga race for what it is, for what it's worth. We've heard that they, are reportedly offering a 3-year, $45 million deal. That may be the most money he gets offered by a team in this offseason. And maybe you take that, and even in 3 years, if it is 3 years and you go back into free agency, you're still a very young player. Like, it's not like you're old, you're at 30 at that point. You're still very young, and you may be able to recoup some major assets in regards to that. You're 24 years old is Jonathan Kuminga, so you got some time there. And I think he doesn't turn 24 until October. So I would say Kuminga probably should take whatever deal offered. Like, well, I guess the question is, do you want the role that you can earn more money long term, or do you want the money now and hope that by the time that next contract's up, you've earned and shown that you can deserve even more money? I guess that's the mindset that Jonathan Kuminga finds himself in. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. Feel on everything down below, all the topics that we covered today. The Anthony Davis thing, do you think he stays in Washington long term? Do you think he's moved? What do you feel about the Dillon Brooks contract, the Lonnie Walker contract? Let me know all that down below. Make sure you guys like the video. Hit that subscribe button as well. Hit the notification bell as well so you never miss an episode and or live stream for the Full Court Podcast. You can follow us at the Full Court YT. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making an episode. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
Been a presentation of the Breaks Media.